What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back. Thank you so much for joining me today as we review the Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. Folks, in this video we will be highlighting the crash, the demise of the graded and raw singles of the Journey Together cards that happened in the past week or so. And we'll be taking a look at the new record auction prices of the Mario Pikachu card. Yes, it finally went beyond $10,000. We've got a few sales we're going to cover in today's recap. I got that and a lot more, so stay tuned to the very end. Before we get into today's amazing auction recap, I wanted to encourage you to go check out the upcoming 100% Pokemon auction block happening this Sunday, May 18th on FanaticsCollect.com. An auction block that is perfect for anyone looking to pick up PSA, BGS, or CGC graded Pokemon cards with a variety of grades in each category. There are a lot of beautiful slabs up for grabs featuring cards like this Gem Mint First Edition base set Venusaur, beautiful evolutions from Call of Legends, and lots of base set Zards with varying grades that are very much affordable. Like I said, it's happening tomorrow, May 18th, so go check it out. I will put a direct link to this auction block in the description of this video. You checking it out supports this channel tremendously, so I thank you so much for doing that. Alright folks, let's go over the bad before we get to the good in this week's recap. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way, starting off with the graded cards from Journey Together in this Iono's Kilowattrel in PSA 10. This card was selling back about a month ago for about $207.50. Here's another sale for $197. But recently, this card has basically crashed, if you ask me. Here's a PSA 10 sale of $81. Same with the Lily's Rabombi illustration rare. This card was selling as a PSA 10 for $190. Here's another sale for $202 just a month or so ago. And this week, this card crashed very hard, selling for about $66 as a PSA 10. Here we have a Whale Lord that was selling for about $330. This week sold for about $222. Here is a Iono's Bellybolt EX special illustration rare that was selling for about $405, but now sells for about $290. Here is a Hops Zacian EX that was selling for $435 when it first hit the market. Nowadays sells for only $166. Eesh. Here we have an Articuno that was selling for about $510, now sells for about $260. Not looking good, right? Here is a graded Salamence EX in PSA 10. This card was selling for about $700, all the way up to about $1,000 for this card, but recently has plummeted as a PSA 10 to about $390, whereas the raw copies were selling for as much as the PSA 10s are selling for now. Here's a raw copy that sold about 2 months ago for $299. Here's another one that sold for $294, all the way up to about $415 to get your hands on a raw copy of this Salamence. But the raw copies of this card have not aged well. Here's one that sold for $81, another one that sold for $80. And perhaps the most popular card from this set, the Lily's Clefairy EX SIR, was selling as a graded copy. Here it went all the way up to about $1,822 as a PSA 10. It swiftly went down to about $910, $931, $966. So as you can see, between $900 to $1,000. But recently this card has pretty much been cut in half, selling for about $510 as a PSA 10. And the raw copies aren't doing much better. This card used to sell raw for about $570. Here's another sale that was for $510. Nowadays it sells for about $132 for a raw copy. Here's another sale this week for $135. So, Journey Together. Is it crashing? Kind of, yeah. Which is typically what happens to singles whenever a set hits the market, both raw and graded. The singles saturate the market usually, and we see usually major declines in value for a lot of these cards. So this really isn't too surprising. On to this little number right here. I don't know what the heck this is. This kind of frightened me when I first saw it. It is a Jolteon Stamp Rally sticker in PSA 10. Sold for $130, and I thought this was a dead cat when I first saw it. This thing used to look like a cat I dissected in college one time. It is ugly. It did my boy Jolteon dirty. I think it's hideous. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about it? Here we have a binder collection of 25 tag team cards
You see the Alolan Raichu and regular Raichu card there. We have the Snorlax and Eevee, Mimikyu, Gengar, Mew and Mewtwo. Lots of good cards in this binder. Sold for about $1,628 this week. Here we have a PSA 10 Latios GX from Team Up, sold this week for $6,201. Absolutely insane. Here we have from Terrestrial Festival a Japanese Black Label Umbreon EX, sold this week for $4,930, while this Black Label Japanese Umbreon VMAX sold for $9,200 this week. And then here, folks, it's that PSA 10 Full Art Mario Pikachu finally sold for over $10,000 in auction. We saw two sales, actually. Here's one for $10,350, another one that sold for $11,300 this week. So we knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time, right? A couple of cards from the XY era. Here is a Team Rocket's handiwork. This is from Fates Collide, an awesome looking card. I love it. It's so goofy. This card sold as a PSA 10 for an even $600. Here is a Mew EX Black Star promo in PSA 10 that sold for $2,700. Here is a Flareon EX from the Generations Radiant Collection, sold for $3,050, while the Japanese Flareon EX in BGS 10 Black Label condition sold for $6,150. Getting into some vintage cards, we have this first edition Quapo in PSA 10, otherwise known as the German Polyrath, sold for $1,050. Here is a Korean first edition base set Mewtwo in PSA 10, sold for $2,666. Here we have a nice little lineup of the raw copies of a Shadowless Squirtle and a first edition Wartortle and Blastoise from base set that sold for $1,225. Couple of very interesting cards from Fossil. We have a first edition Lapras in PSA 10. Very low pop card from Fossil set, sold for $4,050, along with this first edition Articuno, also a very low pop card that sold for $3,650. Here we have a raw first edition Dark Charizard Holo from Team Rocket set, sold for $325. Which I thought was quite a bit, but you take a look at the back of it, it's pretty rough around the edges, but hey, I wanted to include some raw card sales in this recap. Here is a non-holo Dark Charizard in PSA 10 that sold for $1,325. Here's an unlimited Shining Mewtwo from Neo Destiny, sold for $2,700, while this unlimited Shining Charizard, also from Neo Destiny, sold for $5,350 this week. A couple of E-Series cards. Here is a Houndoom from Skyridge in PSA 10, possibly my favorite Houndoom card of all time, sold for $3,295. We also have this Gyarados from Skyridge, which might be my second favorite Gyarados of all time, right behind the Shining Gyarados, sold as a PSA 10 for $3,850 this week. We saw a lot of very expensive reverse holo cards come by this week. Here's a reverse holo Mewtwo from Legendary Collection, sold as a PSA 10 for $4,950. Here is a reverse holo Infernape from Platinum, sold as a PSA 10 for $1,225 this week. Here's a reverse holo Tyranitar from EX Team Rocket Returns that sold for $1,525, along with this other Dark Tyranitar also from EX Team Rocket Returns that sold for $2,204. Here is a reverse holo Dark Gyarados that sold for $1,900. And then finally we saw this reverse holo Charizard from Unseen Forces sell as a PSA 10 for $2,950. And then here, folks, from the Black and White Legendary Treasures, we have a gold full art Reshiram in PSA 10 that sold for $3,600. Here is a Lugia EX from Unseen Forces that sold for $8,850, while this Lugia from Call of Legends sold for $9,050. On to this PSA 10 Gold Star Espeon from the Pop Series 5, sold this week for $15,450. Here we have a PSA 10 Black Star promo Mewtwo Level X. I do love me some Level X cards. This card sold for $7,387 this week. Here we have the Charizard from Plasma Storm, sold as a PSA 10 for $14,850, and this card has quite literally been on fire the past few weeks. On to some sealed product sales. Here we have a sealed case of 10 Crown Zenith Elite Trainer boxes that sold for $1,575. And I remember, not that long ago, maybe about a year ago, these boxes were selling for $40 a pop. Some even less if you got them in auction, so yeah. Now they're over, what, $160 a box? If you break this case down,
Pretty crazy. Speaking of crazy, here's a Steam Siege booster box that sold for $950 this week. Here is an XY Furious Fist booster box that sold for $3,300. And then we saw two heavy, guaranteed holo first edition base set booster packs with the Charizard artworks that sold collectively for $20,250 this week. So yeah, $20,000 for two guaranteed heavies? What do you think? Up next, we have this sealed first edition Team Rocket booster box that sold this week for $21,750. And then on to the Fanatics Collect weekly auction block, we have this BGS 10 Pikachu Van Gogh promo card that sold for $2,520. We have this CGC 10 Pristine Misty's Golduck First Edition Holo from Gym Challenge, sold for $3,360. This is a Pop 3 card. Here we have another reverse holo card in PSA 10. This one is the Rayquaza from Holon Phantoms. This sold for $4,080. Here we have a Japanese XY promo special case Team Rocket card in PSA 10, sold for $9,300. Here we have a PSA 8 Daisuke Club 8600 point Master Scroll card, sold for $9,600 this week. Here is another Mario Pikachu in PSA 10 that sold for $10,500. Here's another Master Scroll card. This one is a BGS 9.5 and sold for $10,800. Here we have a first edition Pichu from Neo Genesis, sold for $11,100 as a PSA 10. And the final auction in this week's video would have to be this CGC 10 Pristine Holo Gengar from Skyridge that sold for $11,400. Thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate you watching my videos more than you know. Let me know what you thought of these auctions in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you. That's all I got. I'll catch you in my next one.